Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Ethereum, heading home. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, as we've discussed throughout 2022, in general, the destination for Ethereum is to head back home to the lower logarithmic regression band fit to quote unquote non-bubble data. So we were in this period briefly in 2015 and 2016 at around 50 cents to a dollar. I know that kind of stings a little. We revisited our lower regression band in late 2016 to early 2017 at around $6 to $14 or so. We then spent a good bit of time in this level from late 2018 until late 2020 with some brief vacations out of it. But again, we mostly spent a lot of time in this range within those couple of years, more or less between a price of around $87 up to around $300 or so. And now the lower regression band, if you're curious, ranges from $488 to $1,016. So this is the destination, in my opinion. Now, I mean, it's always hard to know the exact journey that we're going to take to get there. And I would even suggest that we could go below the regression band like we have in the past. And I honestly would say that there is a 70% chance probably that we end up wicking below it at some point. Remember, these regression bands are good for a cycle, and then you typically have to refit it at the end of the next bear market. But I would say, I mean, we've wicked below it before. We can always go below it again. But I generally would say that, this range down here has always been the destination. It's just hard to know the exact journey we take to get down there. Now, if you look back over the course of this year, we have followed every single one of these Ethereum rallies. And if you go back and watch my videos this year, I was bearish at every single one, right? We talked about getting rejected up here and following sort of like the path that Bitcoin was following. And namely, what we were looking at was the similar type of pattern that Bitcoin saw, and that is putting in higher lows only to get rejected off the 200-day. This is a very common pattern after the top of a bear market or after the top of a bull market. You come back down, you put in higher lows for a while, you get rejected from the 200-day, and that's usually pretty good confirmation if you're not already convinced that the bear market has arrived. And then we capitulated down, right? We went down to 800 and, $80 or something like that. And then we went right back up, right? We went right back up to the bull market support band, right? This preceded the Ethereum merge. And I put out a video actually after this top here and said I thought that we would have another bounce up into the merge, but that we would likely go higher on the Ether Bitcoin pair, but the Ether USD pair would stay lower. That actually did play out. I didn't really, it didn't really benefit me too much because I just, I've been mostly saying this for the entire year, but I mean, you can see, we came up here in August, and then we had a wick higher slightly in September. And then ever since then, we've sort of just been all over the place. But every single time that we visited the bull market support band or the bear market resistance band, if you prefer, it's just been one rejection after another. And I would argue that until we make it back home, I don't think it's worth spending too much mental energy thinking that we're about to break back above it. Okay? I think Ethereum needs to make it home first. This has happened many times. I mean, we do eventually go back home, despite despite people thinking that we won't make it there. But this has been, sort of one of those things where it plays out essentially every single cycle. And again, I know these things sound crazy, and I know, we don't a lot of times, people don't want to generally believe it. But listen, I mean, last bear market, Ethereum ended up dropping about 95%. Now think of this. Bitcoin's first bear market, let's go take a look at this. Bitcoin's first bear market, it dropped about 94%, I believe. About 94% or so, right? I mean, he rounded around 94%. Bitcoin's second bear market only dropped around 87. So it's hard to get the wicks exactly right, but I mean it was around 87 or so, 87%. So it was 95 and then 87. If you assume that Ethereum is sort of just like one cycle behind it, which again I do understand the recession implications and whatnot, but if you were to assume that, then it would make sense to assume that you could see like an 87% correction, maybe an 88% correction that gets you down sub $600, right? It gets you down to those levels. It just can take a while to get there. You know, bear markets don't resolve themselves overnight. They take a long time. And again, price-based capitulation is one thing, but time-based capitulation is arguably a much more important factor to the equation. And after a certain period of time, you know, people just throw in the towel, right? They say enough is enough. I don't want to see it through. I just can't watch it bleed anymore. But hopefully you've used 2022 to to build up a cash position, to not YOLO in to every single bear market rally, every single counter trend rally, and just exercise patience for things sort of come back down to earth. So again, I mean, right now, and if you go look at just say like the 200 day, what's interesting is we've talked a lot about the importance of the 200 day in bear markets, and you know, wouldn't you know, this rally over here got us up to the 200 day. Same thing over here, right? I mean, it's basically the same exact thing. Sort of forming a bottom, and then, sort of coming back up here and having like, three little peaks before putting in another bottom and then a rally back up. It's somewhat similar type thing, right? Three little peaks in here, putting in another bottom, going back up to the 200 day, getting rejected once again. So again, nothing has changed so far for Ethereum. I mean, it just simply has remained in a bear market in 2022. Now, I will not remain bearish on Ethereum forever. And in fact, I look forward to the day where with a good conscience, I could go back to being bullish on the Ether USD pair. But I still argue that it needs time to unwind, that the lower regression band will eventually be hit, and that Ethereum will be back home in the lower regression band and will just bide its time until we go back into another bull market. Again, I will remind you that these regression lines, I think they're really good when you sort of fit it to the end of the bear market and they sort of project out the general accumulation phase before going into the next bull market. But this is just sort of a guide. We could wick below it, just like Bitcoin is already below its own regression band. But this is sort of the expectation that as you get into a future bear market, we could sort of test those bounds and then come back up and accumulate for a while before going back into another bull market. Hopefully, this video series on Ethereum this year has been helpful to a lot of you. I know it hasn't necessarily been what you wanted to hear, but my common retort is that blind optimism, because of the fundamentals and all this stuff, it gets you absolutely nowhere. It might make you some friends in the short term, but what happens when the bottom falls out, right? What happens when the bottom falls out? So look, these markets, again, they take a long time to unwind. And I mean, we can see it with all the events that are unfolding before our eyes, basically on a weekly basis. We can see it all unfolding, before our eyes, and I mean, it's just taking quite a long period of time to actually play out. And as far as the Ethereum Bitcoin pair, if we go take a look at that, as you guys are aware, I flipped bearish on Ethereum Bitcoin right here. And if you go look at the first video on my channel, it's right here. And I was very bullish on Ether Bitcoin down here. Very bullish, right? I mean, I talked about how undervalued it was, how we were about to start a bull run that was likely going to last until 2023. And you might say, well, why did you change your stance in mid-2022? Well, I assumed that with, because everything was over, that was it, right? I was just sort of waiting. I viewed this as the top, and then once we sort of had this dead cat bounce back up, I just said, all right, this is the time to exit this trade if you haven't already exited. So like this trade I made over here, getting into a heavy ether position, I exited a lot of that over here. Furthermore, when Bitcoin rallied in late 2020, I converted some of it into Ethereum to take advantage of the Ethereum tsunami that occurred in the second quarter of 2021. Traded a lot of that back to USD. But that's sort of the journey that I took with Ethereum this cycle. From here to here on the Ether Bitcoin pair. Admittedly, this pump kind of surprised me, right? I didn't think the merge would have legs to get this valuation back up to these levels. I used this opportunity here to take another trade to reduce my Ethereum exposure even more. And so far it's working out. We'll see where ultimately everything ends up. I still think that this looks like a distribution phase. I know not a lot of people like to look at it like that, but I bet you if we were to look at this like if we were to say take 1 divided by the Ether Bitcoin pair, you would probably look at this and say it looks like an accumulation phase. Would you not? Would you not look at this and say it looks like an accumulation phase and it's about to break up? Right? Well, you're looking at the inverse of it, right? So that means if you take the 1 divided by out, if you thought the last chart looks like it's going to break up, then that means you think this chart's likely going to break down. Another way to visualize this is to maybe take a bar pattern of this accumulation phase over here. Put it over here, invert it, right? I can sort of make it the same width as what we're going through right now. Kind of looks similar, right? I mean, this sort of last pump here has been going on a long time. I am surprised that it's lasted this long, admittedly, right? But I don't think it's, I honestly don't think it's going to last too much longer, but I also would have said that 6 months ago. So, take that into consideration, I suppose. But I mean, so far the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation remains at right around 0.07. Still think it's going to have to come back down to earth as Ethereum's valuation on its USD pair eventually goes back home to the lower regression band. Okay, I think it's only a matter of time. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Remember, we do have the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. You can find a link to that down in the description below. Thank you guys for tuning in. Subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.